probably one of the most brilliant people that I've ever met in my life.
Okay.
This guy worked for Hughes Aircraft. He was a pilot that flew Special Forces missions and created the stealth helicopter. He was a pilot for American Airlines. In 92, he was standing at his driveway and the car came around the corner and the bones on half his body. He's got a titanium face, but he had suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was so brilliant that he was able to come up with training protocols for the president of American Airlines, but he couldn't know his own name.
What?
Right? And he's learned how to rehabilitate himself. And he told me, he goes, the whole medical society has no clue how to treat a traumatic brain injury. I went to his house and had a meeting with him. I swear to God, I thought I was talking to a guy who maybe had a traumatic brain injury and was making all this stuff up. He didn't play the piano, but he decided that he was going to build a piano. So he bought an old player piano. He had to take it apart. Each key, each 88 keys has 42 pieces to it. And he learned how to rebuild all these things. But the brain doesn't know the difference between a traumatic brain injury and an emotional trauma. It affects it the same way. The protocol is exactly what I learned in my K4 group about gratitudes and doing all these little things. He goes, if you get angry, you shot the body's ability to learn.
What's interesting is to double click on the emotional component. One of the breakthroughs I had recently was resentment. What's on the other side of resentment? Gratitude. When we have this, I wish this didn't happen, and I'm resentful for this experience, whether it's an automobile accident, a disease, or it's an experience with another person that you're resenting that person.
Yeah.
On the other side of it, and that was the first thing you said to me, this was a blessing, like this terrible thing that happened to me. It's universal. This is a ubiquitous realization, no matter what kind of thing that you're looking at, is this particular trauma that occurred, whether it was a deeply physical trauma that still hasn't resolved itself and that is being worked on to finally release and resolve it and move beyond it. There's so many layers there of gratitude and different ways you can approach the gratitude, and that you can work with being grateful and pulling it up. That's kind of an interesting experience, because I really think it's more of a feeling in the body than anything. Like there's an actual feeling that is shifted energy wise from feeling frustrated, resentful, maybe out of options. I have tried X, Y, and Z. I have gone through this test. I've gone to this person, this practitioner, this thing, and nothing is working, to getting into a place where sourcing yourself in knowing that you're feeling that feeling of gratitude, like this guy put together a piano, or it inspires you to make a phone call and find out how someone else is doing. Once you start reaching out outside of your own world, you know you've graduated to another stage of healing.
Yeah. I came up with my own theory that our soul is here for a spiritual journey through a human body. And when I recognize that it's anything that's happening to my human body is for the enlightenment of my soul, I look at the waves coming at me and say, okay, let's see if I can level up. And I've changed my perspective. And that helps me deal with the not so pleasantries that come at us every single day. But I recognize that I'm serving my soul. I've shared with you in our previous phone conversation that I had the ruptured colon and subsequent surgeries and all sorts of stuff. And I've really been suffering the psoas, iliopsoas, hip area.
I know it.
Right. I'm just, in case you would need to correct me. Our common friend Ed seems to think that because of the trauma that I had to that area, that I'm protecting it.
Of course. Yeah.
Right? A lot of times we have these, physical ailments that you help people with, but sometimes the component could be an emotional thing that is causing it. Some people have their shoulders up really high. Sometimes there's an emotional component to it. It could be a trauma or a sports injury or something like that. But all these things need to be addressed, and they can be.
Well, I call them strategies. One of the things that was pretty profound that I learned is called Centropy. And Centropy is this approach where, it's a word, entropy and Centropy. These are definitions of how plants will die or how plants will move towards the light and towards the rain and towards humidity and that kind of thing. So our bodies are moving in Centropy, and we develop these strategies. And so the strategy that you spoke about of lifting up the shoulders, that's a strategy. So many people would, especially in my profession, would look at it and be like, oh my goodness, let me assess this person. The shoulders are up, there's upper trap tightness, there's, rhomboid weakness. But basically there's this thing that I can do, that I can strengthen these muscles and release these muscles. And that will create more balance in this person. And they will essentially unlearn this pattern of defense. And they're approaching the body from looking at it as this is a function, or this is something that we want to create more function in. And it's a logical approach for sure. The way that I'm looking at the body now, after many years, is that's a strategy. There's a reason someone created a defense around their iliopsoas, like you said, or there's a reason that you've got the shoulders up to your ears and that you've, created forward head posture or any of these different things. So these are strategies essentially that you can utilize, the strategies that the body's already created. And then you want to have alternative strategies. So you can develop alternative strategies from the strategy. So it's kind of like little branches that will then form off already developed branch off of a tree trunk. You want to create multiple strategies for the person to experience when they have something that they're trying to overcome. If they identify, this is a pattern, this thing that I do, I don't want to do it anymore. How do I not do it anymore? How do I not have this feeling? How do I not go into this protective pattern? What are some alternative ways? But if you adopt it, just like what you were saying, very, very much same philosophy. If you're adopting it, like the dysfunction is actually a blessing and it's a strategy. So you can see through how the energy is flowing into the body and enhance the way it's already flowing in the body, then you can create so much function in that area where it's working that it essentially moves into the area that does not have that same level of functionality, whether it's blood flow, nervous system stimulation, awareness, connectivity, responsiveness, strength, contractibility, those types of things. Like if you're working with someone who is learning how to walk again, at times the disease that I was diagnosed with would have me in a wheelchair. And so I had to learn how to walk again. And so when you're developing, how do I get that connectivity into my legs, into my feet, into my hips, into my back again? How do I, and it's like, okay, there's energy flowing into the system. How am I going to enhance that to the point where that's going to then spread throughout the body, and the body's then going to stand up and want to propel itself forward, right? The chain stimulates that level of interruption into homeostasis, right? So we're always trying to move towards homeostasis and balance and rhythm in our internal experience, but then something interrupts that. And how it lands in your body, either you can move it through if you're really keen and you've learned how to observe yourself at a deep level and you've developed tools and techniques of how to move that through you right away, or you don't, and then it accumulates more and more and more over time. And then you can learn it later. Yeah. So either way, you get to win. You either deal with it now or you deal with it later, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
So I tend to mentor a lot of young entrepreneurs. They come to me and ask me all sorts of questions. And, the life of an entrepreneur is a very personal journey of enlightenment. So I do liken the entrepreneur's journey to our own being's journey on Earth. And I came across a great phrase that said, ships are safe in port, but that's not what ships are for. The same thing can be said for our body. It is not meant to be, it's meant to experiencing things, not sitting on a couch. And your dedication to mobility really is what allows us every other opportunity on this earthly experience, right? We have to go out, and if we can do it pain-free, it's a lot easier to focus on certain things. If your back is killing you, it's really hard to focus on what you need to do when you're screaming in pain and stuff like that. This is interesting conversations to me, and I know you've spent over 20 years from everything from biotechnology, neurolinguistics, and gyrokinesis movement, Pilates and craniosacral. You've worked with a lot of professionals, retired executives, CEOs, entertainers. For the people meeting you for the first time, can you share the unique combination of science, movement, and psychology that led you to become the person professionals are turning to, not only to heal, but to feel years younger?
I would love that. This started for me during the pandemic, I realized how much people were suffering, including myself, during that period of time, and how much the pandemic and the stress that came was aging us. So I was thinking to myself, what is the best way I could support people that I care about? And so during that time, I took a union of the modalities that I had learned and that assisted me in those really scary times in my life where I had experienced interruptions in my quality of life and health. And I took that union of the various modalities and then I created something that I knew would outlive me. And this body of work that I've studied throughout the years, I put together. And that specific way that I approached it was from a summary and also from a detailed perspective of each modality that I had studied over 20 years. And so then when I put it together in this way, I realized that I needed to share it. And that was sort of the beginning of me creating this thing that took me ultimately 4 years to put together.
So interesting. We've had conversations in the past, and short of having a surgical intervention in a body, you mentioned that everything we need to heal is already inside of us. Where do you get that belief from, and how has it shaped your approach?
Well, we get these helpers along the way in our health journey. And it depends what kind of helper we need at the time and what stage of essentially healing we're in. And healing itself is cumulative and it's also progressive. It's cyclical. So we cycle through healing and these lessons over and over again in our lives. And we will get these opportunities to work with a variety of different practitioners, all the way from a doctor and a surgeon to a chiropractor to an acupuncturist to a therapist to a variety of different people that are treating our symptoms and or treating the cause of the symptoms. So it just depends at what stage in that healing process you're in. And I'm huge on believing that each particular strategy or each particular profession has its merit, is appropriate for certain indications. So is surgery appropriate for someone at a certain stage in their life? 100%. Is massage therapy appropriate for someone at a certain stage in their healing? 100%. What's interesting about all these different approaches to trying to relieve oneself of pain is how long lasting are they and what are the repercussions of each one of these therapies or each one of these treatments on the individual. So for example, if you're at a later stage of healing, you always feel like, oh, my arm aches, I brushed it off, but my arm keeps aching or my shoulder's hurting and I'm not really sure why and it's kind of bothering me and it's whatever. You're not at the level of what you discussed earlier with you can't even stand up from the sofa without feeling your back and it's just you're completely suffering. You're like, I need a solution. I need something to take this pain away. The pain is so great. When you're at that level of pain of the shoulder example, that means that you have a little more flexibility with your approach. You're not suffering so badly that it's completely interrupting your quality of life. So you can do some more research. You can actually take the time to learn as much as you possibly can about your body. And that's part of what I want to help people shortcut. All the way from supplementation to nutrition to movements to healing therapies is you want to do the appropriate thing at that appropriate stage in healing. So if you just don't know that there's other alternatives and you think the only alternative is to wait until it gets so bad that then you have to go get surgery, I would advise that there's a couple things you can do to catch that particular area of the body and that particular dysfunction or something that's irritating you a little bit earlier and approach it from a different place. Getting some education on what you can do and what's going to heal it from a long-term standpoint. The main difference that I noticed was when I was an LMT, a licensed massage therapist, and I was doing massage therapy, I would have many people. Sometimes I would work on 6 to 8 people a day, 5-6 days a week. The people really loved the kind of work I did. I did orthopedic massage, I did craniosacral therapy, I did sports massage. I was very interested, especially orthopedic massage, and really getting to the root cause of what was happening with people, and then giving them homework about how to strengthen the areas that were weak and what caused those certain things. And I kept noticing that the people would book with me every week, and they would book with me as much as they possibly can, especially those that had the resources to do that. And I thought to myself, and this is early 20s, why are these people not ever fixing this? What's the root cause of this? Like, why does this, they have the same thing that happens over and over and over. So that led me to a professional journey where I studied multiple things over the next decade. And the conclusion of which I've come to is that if you're an early stage, yes, you need a helper. Yes, you need a guide. Yes, you need some tutorials. And yes, you need some education. But as you move through those stages of healing and you want to actually finally and permanently address that issue for yourself, you actually have to do that yourself. Your own self has to move towards the healing and has to do and put in the healing work in order to make that shift a permanent shift for you. So
you gotta do the work.
Yeah. And
there's no pill for this stuff. There's no
chiropractor who's going to align you away. And there's no massage therapist that's going to massage the pain away. It's literally the person who comes to an understanding about what way that stress and that energy source is sitting inside of their body. And then how do I work with this in such a way that it's going to liberate me instead of the opposite?
So you give us the instructions, but we have to take the action.
Correct.
And knowing a little bit about your journey, I mean, you had ulcerative colitis, you had an autoimmune condition that caused incredible pain that you said you at one point couldn't even walk, and you're hospitalized and you face all sorts of dilemmas. You probably thought you were going to have a lifetime of that.
Yes, and I was told multiple times that I needed my intestines removed completely, that they needed to do massive surgery on my intestines. I mean, I was at the place where it was so painful that I almost bled to death. My hemoglobin levels were at 7, and when they went down to 6, I flatlined. I had to get 2 blood transfusions to save my life. I've had, multiple hospitalizations, and really what I learned during those really, really difficult years of my life where I was experiencing these flare-ups and these interruptions to everyday life is that I had to educate myself. I had to learn what it was and how my body worked, and use my intelligence as much as I could to understand why this was happening and how I could liberate myself from this. So I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't one thing. There wasn't a panacea. So I went all in on working with people that I respected. I worked with people that had expertise beyond mine, that were PhDs in microbiology, that were MDs in a variety of different disciplines, including gastroenterology, and including doctors that had experience with autoimmune conditions and rheumatology and a variety of things. And so when I worked alongside of these physicians and doctors, I learned that there was a variety of things that were at play in the body when it was responding to certain types of stimulus, certain stress, in such a way that it was attacking itself. When I learned those things, I thought, okay, so now I'm going to take that information and I'm going to put it in, I was going to organize it. So I organized all this information, and then I went into a period of how could I get this information out to people? What would be the most effective way? That led me on this journey that's taken a few more years than I thought it would. Anything of a worthwhile endeavor takes a little bit longer than we think it will. And that led me into nutrition, of course, because nutrition plays a massive role in our quality of life. Supplementation, and what I needed to supplement with. It led me into how I needed to do meditation, breath work, prayer, anything that was going to put me internally focused and allow me to take my thoughts and work with them through my emotions and into the feelings and then into my body. And so I went into these different parts of health. Essentially We can call them buckets of health. We could say they were different aspects of a total well-being. That really allowed me to distill the things that brought me back into balance, essentially experimenting. And then I came to sort of the right recipe that has worked for me. And I've been incredibly fortunate to live a much higher quality of life since I did a lot of learning, since I did a lot of studying. I was working with physicians and I had a lot of different universities that I could access health information and track my data. And then I started realizing that I was actually getting younger after I had all these really life-threatening situations. So my cardiovascular age is actually 11 years younger, and my DEXA scan was showing bones when I was 36 years old, was showing bones of a 21-year-old. I have really worked on continuing to track metrics, including hormones and bone health and all these variables. And I was like, how can I help other people in the aging fields? And that's how I created Years Younger, is from that question, like, what could we do so that the natural decline of aging was something that we approached proactively instead of reactively? And that's really what preventative medicine is all about. I was thinking about how I could do that in a way that would be organized, just like I did it for myself. It took me a while to do it on my own, but when I did it, I was like, okay, now how do I bring this out into the world? And that essentially is Years Younger.
I'm interested to hear more about this program. I do know, for me, my illness manifested itself from anxiety and stress. And I always had this phrase, the issue gets into the tissue. It caused me to have a near-death experience. I mean, laying on a gurney with a priest over the top of me was enough of a wake-up call that I needed to make some changes in my life, and I was happy to take on that journey. You teach that stress, movement, and healing are all interconnected. How can you explain this connection to someone who has only ever thought of pain as a purely physical problem?
Up until now, I mean, really over the past couple of years, people have started to wake up, I think, in terms of realizing that their pain isn't just located in the hip, in their back, in their shoulder. People are starting to realize that there's something else going on. Like you said, that stress came before it, that this particular experience was the culmination of this, and that they're all connected to this area hurting. A few years ago, people didn't know that. When I would have people calling me after they tried acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, yoga, after they were trying all these different things and they were still not getting out of suffering, then I would get a phone call and they were like, this thing hurts. I need you to fix it, you know? And I'm like, now the kinds of conversations I'm having with people are totally different. They're like, hey, I have this thing, you know, I've done all this work. I'm doing this particular type of breath work. I'm doing this thing and it's working, but I'm still not there. I don't have the complete full picture. I know something. I know that this has gone on with this particular, I went through a divorce, or I lost my job, or I went through this particular part of my life. And so I'm getting and having much more advanced phone calls with people where I'm not having to say, hey, you know, what other aspects of your life are playing into this, or having them fill out a health profile that I ask them about various other parts of their health history, essentially, or their life story experience that I can derive and then talk to them about this. Most people are pretty aware that all these things are happening. However, there still seems to be some missing pieces. And so that adage you spoke about, where you said the issue is in the tissue.
The issue gets in the tissue.
In the tissue. Years ago, that expression was actually the issue is in the tissue. Oh. Right? So
I made that up, I thought.
Even it was an expression we used to hear in massage therapy school.
Oh.
And that extra little part that you added into it is exactly correct. It lands in the tissue, but it's not in the tissue, right? So it's not like the origin of it is physical. The origin of it actually comes further upstream, and, you know, it's a thought, and then that thought has a feeling, and then that feeling, if it's not experienced fully, becomes an emotion, and that emotion then becomes a part of the energy is accumulated in the body part that, you know, is easiest for that person to store that type of information. So that would be very interesting as in terms of, and I know there's work like Louise Hay and things where she's directly associating a particular body part with a particular emotion, but there hasn't been extensive like double-blind research studies on anything like that. And that would be a wonderful area, I think, to fully explore in the future of healthcare, for us to explore into the emotional aspect of the variety of why things are being stored in different areas of the body. There's several different disciplines I know that go into that. Specifically, Chinese medicine talks about that, and acupuncture and the lines that the actual points that have an emotion associated with them. So working alongside of that understanding of what's going on deeply inside of your body, as well as what's going inside of your emotional body, is one of the keys. And if you can have someone guide you through that experience in such a way that makes it repeatable for you, where you can always access that, and then it becomes a new pattern and a new strategy for yourself, and then you own that as a tool, and that you can take that kind of tool to essentially prevent any further breakdown of your body in the future, because you know how to do that inquiry with yourself.
You know, all the podcasts and everything that talk about, you know, being younger, we have to exercise more. You know, we're supposed to have 8,000 steps a day. You can do your push-ups, swim, whatever. But you take a little different approach to fitness. It's not just lifting weights or exercise. You talk about tuning. Can you expand on that?
We explore many different approaches to fitness and exercise in years younger, and what I'm noticing for each individual is that the transformation that they're seeking to make happens once they feel like the feelings in their body and what their body is naturally wanting to do. I happen to have studied many different methodologies or types of movement and exercise, all the way from primal movement and squatting and animal crawling and being on the ground, to foot activation and balance, and how important it is to use your toes when you're balancing, and how essential balance is as we age, to strength training with regular free weights and kettlebell training, all the way to Pilates and gyrokinesis and gyrotonic movement, and all these various modalities that I've utilized in order to create the kind of experience I want in my body. Then when I work with people, what's interesting about it is no matter what they start to gravitate to and they dive into, once they develop the courage and the commitment and they start doing that particular thing that they really like to do, then they start to feel what's going on in their body. And then they can become a little bit more capable in doing that particular thing. So they develop some confidence, and I'll go a little bit deeper into the 4 C's that I'm talking about, but then they develop that confidence, and then that feeling creates that transformational experience for them. Feeling into their tissue when they're doing a workout versus, hey, did my workout today, check mark, and following a protocol that is just pre-planned for them, where they're not actually tapping into what stage of their life they're at, what season in their life they're at. I was just having a client call right before this that we were talking about football season, and we were talking about how this is football season and he's going to go into it a completely different way. And because it's ramping up his energy, he's got to balance the energy with some other modalities of movement that allow his system to decompress, so that he can come to, his nervous system will essentially be better regulated, because he's under so much stimulation during football season. And so that level of strength he has to assert, that level of energy that's coming out, like if he doesn't have the equal amount of downtime in his nervous system to allow recovery, then that experience is not going to be sustainable. Eventually, that fire that is in the beginning of the season where we are right now is going to die out, and it's going to be pulling on his adrenal glands and pulling on his hormones. That kind of thing where you're starting to feel your body and not just do what you think you're supposed to do to be healthy. You know, eat right, walk, do the workouts, but you're doing the thing, but you're actually feeling what your body's needing based on having direct access to what you're feeling. So that's what develops with the fitness and exercise we do. The most important component, I would say, would be the courage and the letting go piece of it. Also the commitment, the 4 C's that we're talking about. And this can happen personally as a personal healing journey, but it also can happen professionally. So it can happen professionally to you when you have a big change in your professional life, or it can happen personally to you when you make a big change in your personal life. And most of us are asking ourselves for is to have confidence. We want this confident, we want to be capable. Like, it's great when you get on a specific thing that you do, whether it's the work you do, the job that you do, or it's the hobby that you do, and you have a level of capability. It feels good because then you have a sense of confidence about what you're doing. But if you remember the very beginning when you started doing that work, or when you started that particular activity, didn't have a lot of confidence yet. You were just unsure of yourself. And there's that moment that we all have, that inherent moment inside that has us take a leap of faith, and that courage. It's like, ooh, could we bottle that up? It would be so great if we could bottle up courage and just hand it to each other, or we could keep it, and then when we needed it, we could unbottle the courage and do that thing. But the courage is really what allows us to let go of our preconceived notions of what something might be like if we step into a new place in ourselves, in our professional life, or in our personal life. It's hard to describe what that experience is for each of us, but we all have that. We've had experiences of having that courage to do that thing. And I learned that model I read many books by a man named Dan Sullivan. And Dan Sullivan has coached more coaches than any other person alive on the planet. And his work he's got many models, but that's one of my favorite models, is that in order to make a long-term transformational change in your life, first you have to commit, then you have the courage that takes to show up for that commitment. Then eventually you develop the capability, and then you have the confidence that you're seeking. And many of us get stuck in the first two. We don't do the first two. We procrastinate on that thing we know we're supposed to do because we just want to do the thing we have capability in. And we want the confidence to be there for us to take that next step. But that doesn't happen without courage.
These transformations that people have, they get rewarded for their hard work and commitment to the program. Can you tell us a little bit about some powerful examples of how people have been so positively rewarded by doing this type of work?
Yes, there's a few people that come to mind when I'm thinking about client stories or people that have made some phenomenal breakthroughs. There's one person comes to mind. When he started working with me, he lost quite a bit of weight, and he felt an enhanced sense of capability moving his body, and then confidence. And then he ended up meeting the love of his life and getting married shortly afterwards. And that has dramatically changed his state of well-being. Like, he went from a single guy to a married man who really had the confidence that he was able to make those changes himself and own that. And another person comes to mind, and having quite a bit of stress at work and needed to retire and was not wanting to retire and was really afraid to take that next step. He had been working his entire life. So we built up enough strategies within his ability to execute on those strategies that he then made the commitment to leaving a long-time position and retired. And now he has a much higher quality of life, and his health has really dramatically changed because he doesn't have the work hours he used to. So that was another huge win. And then another person who came to me, she had done a ton of yoga. She had neck problems. She was a very active person already. So she was already exercising. She was biking. She was hiking. She would go on trips with her husband, and they were biking quite a bit. And then sometimes she would have little hamstring issues or neck issues. She went through a variety of different modalities with me, and we touched into Pilates that specifically spoke to her. And she was able to take that and then develop a strength within her system, in her neck, her back, her abdominals, her core. And she didn't have the neck issues anymore. And so it was kind of like this exploration for her of like what the thing was that was going to help her continue do the things she loved, but do them so that she wasn't constantly feeling pain when she was doing her fun stuff in her life, her recreational life, and her vacations. And I love thinking about those clients because they're all very different people, and they're at different stages in their life, and they have different desires and different wants, but the worked for all of them. And that makes It makes me very happy.
Most of us at some point are going to be getting a phone call from a doctor's office that a difficult conversation about a chronic illness, cancer, for example, diabetes, and whatnot. And there's a whole list of them.
Diagnosis of a life-threatening disease is serious, and it shocks the person often and will have someone want to make changes. So if they're wanting to make changes, a lot of times they do stop doing things and start doing other things because that's what the brain does. It wants to fix the problem. It wants to associate something with another thing, and then it wants to go ahead and fix it. The ways that someone approaches that are going to be unique. They're going to be one-on-one in terms of how someone approaches, a diagnosis of cancer is an individual thing. And one person's going to need to go through it from an emotional standpoint first, and one person's going to need to go through it from a mental standpoint first, and another person's going to take a spiritual approach. Every person's approach is going to be very different and unique to that individual. The gift that I have in neurolinguistics, I learned how our brain stores information in different files. So essentially how we store information, how we process information, and then how we learn information. So each one of us does that in our own unique combination of ways. And we circle back to that particular way every 12 to 16 seconds. It's like a little circle of how our brain is accessing information, processing information, and then communicating information. After working with thousands of people, I'll be able to distinguish auditory, kinesthetic, visual, and how they developed those strategies that they've put together for their well-being or for their survival or for higher learning or any of these particular ways that they've gone about storing files for themselves. And then I will learn as much as I can about how they like to learn based on how they store files. And that's when then I can work with that person to help them take that journey with the most effectiveness. So I do use NLP when working with people when they have something serious like that.
You don't shy away from it. You want to help the people.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And I've had experiences with many people who have had diagnosis, variety of different conditions, and myself who have gone and graced those very surreal places already. So yes, I'm comfortable with that.
You often talk about longevity, but in a holistic sense, not just lifespan, but health span. What do you see as the future of longevity practices?
This is a very exciting question. I see AI playing a part in this, of course, and our ability to aggregate an incredible amount of information right now. Like, we can tap into so many different parts of the world and of society and of experiences we haven't personally had. So we get to aggregate all this information together. And I believe that that's going to create this opportunity to have accelerated personalized medicine, where we're able to very strategically address people at a personal level instead of at a numbers level like we have been in healthcare. So I think this is going to make a dramatic shift in how we're working with people long term. That management of care is going to be where AI is going to really, really shine when we're able to take a bunch of personal information and hopefully we're going to protect it as much as possible, and that we're going to be able to create these much more specific ways that a person can address their conditions and their interest in improving their health from a micro level instead of from such a broad stroke macro level, one size fits all. That's where some of these, where when I started putting together a model, I built a business plan, or I wrote a business plan in 2015. And it was this vision I had of a healthcare clinic. And it was a combination of Western and Eastern medicine. And in this clinic that we had a variety of different opportunities and modalities that people could, an in-person clinic that people could see physicians, as well as they could experience a variety of different healing modalities simultaneously, get their blood work, as well as address the blood work with whatever kind of supplementation they needed to fill in the gaps and that kind of thing. That has been a long-term dream of mine, is this amalgamation of a union of the sciences and the healing therapies coming together. I believe that right now where it sits, you've probably thought of this yourself or heard of clinics like this yourself, and they sit in concierge medicine, which isn't accessible to an everyday person. It's typically exclusive, it's in exclusive places in the world, and it's not widely available. So where I started was this online, which is globally available. And eventually I'm going to need the right partners and the right creative team to come together to have such an in-person clinic. And that is something I envision for the future and being able to assist people in the field of aging and longevity.
What are some of the signs or symptoms that a person is prematurely aging? For example, getting off the couch and you hear someone grunt. Right. What are some of the signs that, like, hey, yeah, I'm in that category, that you can say, you don't have to live that way?
Well, it's subtle, but here's some of the things. You mentioned repetitive motion that you do frequently, which is sit and stand up. Well, if you think about sitting, one of the things we're doing is we're always sitting at the same level. Whether you have bar stools at your island in your kitchen or you have a kitchen table where the kitchen chairs are a certain height, what you'll notice is you're not changing levels. And if you observe a child, and I'm talking a child under 10, they are constantly changing levels. They're going from jumping up high and bouncing a lot to getting on the ground. And what starts to happen is, and this is becoming earlier and earlier now for us, is, it probably didn't used to happen until 30s. Now it's happening in the 20s because of the amount of desk work and computer work we're asking ourselves to do. We're not getting on the ground. If you get on the ground and you need to use both hands to get on the ground and you need to use both hands to get up off the ground, that means you need to start addressing your mobility. Simply from a functional standpoint, simply from I want to be able to carry groceries when I'm 80 years old. I don't want to not be able to go to the grocery store. I don't want to be able not to climb a stair. I want to be able to do these things that are everyday events, right? Being able to change levels is a huge warning sign that you would need to increase your level of education in mobility and functional body movement.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Like I was mentioning the in-person clinic and having partners and companies that share that mission and collaborating with them is where I'm focused on the next phase in my life, is creating those synergies with other like-minded individuals and companies and teams. And, if I continue doing the online work, I'm going to have people, fitness professionals, healing professionals come in and share their work inside of this online system. And one of the wonderful things about the online world, and this was the breakthrough the pandemic was able to, the gift, right, which was initially not a gift and became something that I turned into a gift, was because I had to close my personal studio, my in-person studio during the pandemic. And that's when I was like, okay, we're going online. Well, this enables global participation. So unlike an in-person clinic where you actually, if there's this really fantastic healing modalities that are happening and they're in San Francisco, for example, and you're in Buffalo, New York, you can't get to that specific thing. Well, when things are online, you get access globally. So whether you're in India or whether you're in San Francisco, you get that access. So I want to do as much as I can to create that ability for anyone to access that information and then to take it into a facility that enables us to do more advanced treatments and more advanced testing.
Really interesting stuff, but I got to believe some people listening are going to be skeptical that they've tried everything. What would you say to them right now?
I'm glad that they tried everything and that they're still searching. If they're still searching, that means that there's still things that they can discover and there's still healing that their body is asking for. And I would say that if they haven't gone forward with connecting the dots between everything that they have done, that we can help, that we'd love to have you as a member, and that connecting the dots and creating a bigger picture in terms of what you can do to have a toolkit at home with you everywhere that you're walking into your future with. Getting a toolkit for your health, because your body is your vehicle for fun. If your body is not functioning, you're not having fun. So you definitely want to make sure that if you've tried everything and you're still looking, you're not lost. You're still working on creating that bigger picture that's going to be your go-to, that you feel great about, continuing to improve upon as you get older and as you continue to learn, and we all learn more information about how to improve our quality of life.
If they were to sign up, what could they expect in month 1?
In month 1, they would expect learning about how the breath and how most movement has to do with a combination of things, especially advanced movement these days. It's like, do I have good alignment? People are asking, is my body in the right position? I want good alignment. You've got to breathe, you've got to have good alignment, and you've got to move. And those are kind of the ingredients that are in most people's systems or regimes or structures. And one of the missing pieces that I noticed that I was able to get to learn about in the gyrotonic and gyrokinesis methodology was how important rhythm is. And rhythm is an essential component to helping yourself heal. So we would tap into rhythm. A person would start to experience what rhythm is inside of their system. So whether we were working on balancing, or whether we were working on breath work, or whether we were working on strength, or whether we were working on gyrokinesis, or whether we were working on abdominal control and Pilates, or whether we were working on a variety of different layers and approaches to the body systems. The rhythm and being able to feel your body's rhythm is one of the first things that you would want to learn in being a part of our community. So the rhythm, essentially, if you think about your body's operating rhythmically all the time. And you can tap into that rhythm in your body and create a better balance, a better equilibrium, and just better functionality.
It's going to take a courageous person to want to change their behaviors, obviously. So, if you want to change your life and you want it done now, you need a coach.
Thank you, John. You said it so much more effectively than me. It's so much easier to float someone else's boat than your own.
But that's the truth is,
Thank
like,
you.
Okay, I've been working on my back. It still hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or emotional things you've mentioned in a previous, that you intuitively can look at my body. You can see way things are, you can see through me and see what's going on with my skeletal system and stuff like that. Let's give the people an exciting little hook to say, I can get the results that I want when they work with you.
Absolutely.
So
why
should somebody hire Kerri Affronti?
I will provide accountability. I'm going to provide a structure so that you can come in and feel right at home with knowing what it is that you want, what you most desire, can be heard and experienced and listened to in such a way that's uniquely perfect for you, based on how you've created your life so far and the strategies you've put together, and that I can help coach you towards what it is that you're desiring with accountability. And so when you commit and then you take that step of courage, you will develop a capability like you have never had before. And that capability then allows you to have an increased sense of confidence in your body that you've been desiring and yearning for.
The stuff that I've learned with K4 about the emotional resiliency, and he says the same protocols, it's gratitude. Be grateful for what you do have.
100%.
And don't worry about what you don't have, and just being courageous and try new things, and don't get angry if you can't do it. Break it down into one more slower step and do that much, and then keep moving forward. Some days you probably scratch your head and you're like, am I making a difference?
It's hard. I mean, we go through so many things with entrepreneurship, and it's just such a, like you said, it's a journey of enlightenment. And I've literally been an entrepreneur since I was like 10 or 11 years old.
Yeah.
Like I was selling jewelry, in the principal's office. Like the principal would buy my jewelry, and so he'd promote it, and I would, like, in my locker have all the jewelry, and the kids, like, I've been selling
you can never work for
God,
somebody else ever
like,
again.
it's very difficult to,
It is. We're the ship that goes out into the rough waters.
Yeah.
Right? But we're still doing it when other people aren't. So again, courage.
Thank you.
Right?